Bedford and Livonia. And so today, we're not, for those of you who've been following me, we always go over. I try to have an hour meeting. It never works because the conversation gets so good. So with that, I don't want to prolong the hour, but of course, I'd be remiss if I don't recognize the team. So here I am, Steph Young, but of course we have Kevin Shropshire. He's scheduler extraordinaire and legislative director. We have Miss Alicia George. She is our constituent relations director, holding it down. Whenever you call me about your unemployment, I call Miss Alicia because she has found a way to help. We have together, working as a team, recovered probably over $1 million since we've been in office, making certain that Michiganders keep roofs over their heads, keep food on the table. We have really been able to do a great service, and we're now working with the department regarding people who are starting to get these letters again about you owe again. We thought we had cleared that. So we're going back into the boxing ring to make certain that folks who did the right thing, we're not talking about people who tried to scam the system, but we're talking about the people who did the right thing during the pandemic, that they followed all the rules that the state put forth. Whether the state messed up and still told us the wrong thing, that it should not fall on the resident. And so we're still fighting that good fight. So if any of you have received any of those letters, let us know so you can become a part of the folks that we're helping to resolve that. Just let us know. And then of course we have Ms. India Jones. She's my intern extraordinaire. You got to have young folks around you, right? You got to be well-rounded and know what the young people are thinking. Because I'm getting up there, folks. I'm 57. So I need to have some 20-somethings around me. So I'm grateful for my team. We make things happen for the residents here in the 8th House District and other places. People call us from all over. And that's just because we get things done, plain and simple. So with that, we're going to go ahead and kick off our conversation. How many of you all know that April is Financial Literacy Month? And that's a good thing because particularly in my neck of the woods, people need to understand, what financial literacy even looks like. Like, I'm a proponent of having it in schools, teaching our young kids early on, but at the same time, we need to understand how the state is managing our money, how those things really work when it comes to the budget. And I'll tell you, when you come to Lansing, you end up becoming a jack of all trades. There are so many things going on that you need to know about. And the budget process is one of those things. And it is absolutely one of the most complicated. It's really complicated, at least for me. My son is the kid that is going into finance and wants to be a CPA. You see, I'm a policy girl. I'm not the numbers girl. And so I'm really excited to have Bob Schneider with us on today. He's the Senior Research Associate with Citizens Research Council for Michigan. So this is the guy who knows his stuff. He knows it so well that I was like, now look here, don't leave us in the wind. Make sure we understand what you're going to be talking about. But this is going to be a good discussion. And then we're going to loop in my adopted nephew. Look, let me tell you, I love the young people. People know that. I have a bunch of adopted nieces and nephews all over, because if I don't pay attention to what they're doing, if I don't help encourage them, then I'm one of those who will. And so my nephew here, Cortez Diamond, he has become a cryptocurrency expert. He is a go-to for people, not just across our country, but actually becoming across the world. He's becoming international. He's going to share with us what it's all about. It's still over my head, people. Crypto is still over my head. All I know is regular paper dollar bill and my debit card. That's about as deep as I go, but he's going to help us understand that. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and kick it over to Bob. Bob, go ahead.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Representative Young, for the invitation today. Happy to be here. Thank you, Kevin. It was good to work with you and kind of coordinating on this.
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm Bob Schneider, as Representative Young said, with the Citizens Research Council. Just real quick, who we are, the Citizens Research Council. We're we're over 100 years old. It's a nonprofit research organization here in Michigan, and I'm happy to be back with the Research Council for my second stint with this sort of think tank, Michigan think tank, and I work very heavily on state budget and finance issues. Just for everyone's information, Be aware our website address is crcmich.org. Later this year, as ballot initiatives come on the ballot, maybe in November, that we'll be voting on. One of the things that we do at the Research Council is put out simple publicly accessible analyses of those ballot initiatives that you may see on this November's ballot. So look for those in the fall. They're usually quite helpful. We get good reviews for those. But today I'm going to give you a quick primer on the state budget. And if you've been listening to media reports, you may have heard the state, has a whole bunch of revenue right now, which is great for the state. It's great for the state budget. What we're going to talk about is why that's the case. Especially, remember, with COVID, Michigan's employment is still down significantly. We're about 20% down from where we were before the COVID crisis hit in terms of the number of jobs in the state. So how do we have all this money if employment is still down, we're still trying to grow back? I'm going to give you a little background on that to help explain where all this money is coming from and kind of what's responsible for it. Then I'm going to go back a little further in time and provide some historical perspective on the budget. Remind everybody that even though everything is really great right now, the budget's still recovering from a real rough period earlier in this decade, earlier in the century. And that's a perspective not a lot of people are thinking about right now. So we'll talk about kind of the two sides of the state budget.
Thank you, because that's so important. And I'm always, I try to share with people, this is like this one-time money. It doesn't fix everything long-term. And so when we're talking about how we spend those funds, we've got to be thinking about, the forecasting. We got to be able to forecast, right?
Yep, absolutely. And think about what was happening 15 years ago. And Rep. Young, you probably, I don't think you were probably a legislature 15, 20 years ago. No, so we've got lots of new legislators coming in, working on this budget. So before we get into the history though, just a quick couple slides on the budget background, kind of a big picture view. This first slide, where does the money come from? So we have over $70 billion state budget. And just really quickly, the slide on the left here shows almost half of that comes from the federal government. So that's money for Medicaid. It's money for federal housing dollars, federal workforce development dollars. The budget decisions that Rep. Young and her colleagues work on really focus on the orange part, that state side, about 55% of the revenue coming from the state. And on the right chart, we show where is that money? Where is that money coming from? The upper left corner, we see money for transportation. That's our gasoline tax and dedicated dollars for transportation. We have money dedicated to healthcare that helps support the Medicaid program, revenue sharing. The other pie chart here is fees on banks and public utilities and the entities that we regulate. All of that stuff is kind of off the budget too. Rep. Young, that's kind of dedicated money that goes for certain things by statute and isn't part of the budget decision making. The budget decision making that happens in Lansing is really those two big pieces of the pie, the general fund and the school aid fund. Those are our two big revenue funds, and it's where the discretionary revenue of the state lies, and 99% of the budget decision making is about that revenue. So let's advance one slide and we'll look at where that money is actually spent. So this takes a look at the budget from a functional perspective. Notice about almost 40% of the state budget is K-12 schools. It goes to our local school districts to support our school systems. The other biggest piece, health and human services, Medicaid, child welfare, public assistance. That's another big piece of it.
But Bob, this is a question that we get. So you look at that and you say, okay, it seems like Michigan is investing the right way. We're investing in our schools, and then our schools are still at the bottom of the list.
Right. That's hard. So it's a matter of how much we invest per student relative, and we've just made some big advances in recent budgets to close the gap between high funded and low funded districts. which we hope will help, but right, that's always a challenge, you know.
That's
how
always a
you,
challenge.
Yep,
Yes,
that's.
yes. Okay, go
So,
ahead.
Yeah, I just focus on one thing, that everything else slide, 16% of the budget. Notice we spent a lot of money on some big core things. Every department, every little department, every function that you don't see listed here, the universities, health and human services, K-12, transportation, our prison system and corrections, fits into that little box. So it just shows you, you have some big dollar items that we spend money on in the state. All those other little smaller departments and smaller functions kind of fit into a kind of a narrow piece of the pie in the state budget. We spend the great majority of our money on 5 or 6 big things in the state. And that's, I think that's something that not everybody always appreciates when you look at the state budget. So let's go to the next slide and talk about the budget and the COVID pandemic. We have a ton of money, as Rep. Young knows, as her colleagues know. How did we get here? How do we have billions and billions of dollars in extra money when we just went through a pandemic that really hit our employment levels pretty significantly? And yet we're sitting on a whole bunch of money right now. Let's go one more slide. So let me give you a quick story about what happened with the state budget, and try to make this clear to everybody. So what we're looking at is, remember, we saw those 2 big slides, general fund, school aid fund. That top line, the blue line, it maps out that what we were forecasting for revenue way back in January of 2020, before anybody knew what COVID was. $24 billion, $25 billion in revenue out through time in fiscal year 20, 21, 22, 23. COVID struck in March. And a couple months later, we had a revised revenue forecast. That orange line shows the new forecast right after COVID struck. The state thought the sky was falling. We were, those 2 big funds that we talked about, school aid fund, general fund, we were going to lose over $6 billion. That's a lot of money from those 2 funds just within a couple months. So we were halfway through fiscal year 20, and the state cut billions and billions of dollars from the budget, preparing for the worst case scenario. Then within a year and a half, if we advance one more slide, what we found is that didn't happen. Instead of losing all that money, we actually had revenues boom. The revenue forecasts from the last revenue forecast that Rep. Young referred to earlier, from January of 2022, is now this kind of gold line at the top. So we went from thinking the sky was falling to actually having revenues boom. And we had already so we cut the budget, prepped for the worst case scenario, and then revenues, instead of falling, actually exploded for us. Why did that happen? I think the state can thank the federal government, quite frankly, for this. We had lots of federal stimulus. Most of us probably got a couple rounds of tax refunds. We had enhanced employment benefits thanks to the federal government for folks that may have lost their job. We had programs like the Paycheck Protection Program that help businesses keep people on the job. Lots and lots of federal money going out into the economy. And that's really the spendable income, lots of spendable income. So then we had income tax and sales tax coming in, and things got great. So why did we have this boom? It was really all that federal stimulus. We also had a good year with the sales tax because we started buying stuff. We started buying stuff instead of, we didn't go to the movies. We didn't go out to dinner quite as much because of COVID, but we bought hair clippers. I did. Stuff that I wouldn't have maybe otherwise bought. We charge sales tax on that stuff. We don't charge sales tax on services. So that was the other thing that helped us in terms of a revenue perspective.
That was huge. Yes, sir. Now let me ask you that, because a lot, even with the online shopping, because there was a time when it first started, we weren't collecting sales tax. How long ago had it been that we started collecting sales tax?
It's been within the last I think probably 5 years is when we
Yeah.
started doing some of that Main Street, the internet taxing fairness.
Yes.
And we always owed it. Technically, people owed it under our,
Mhm,
we have a sales tax and we have a use tax. And
mhm.
so we all should have been paying that all along, but obviously
Right.
not everybody
This is true.
messes up and sends all that money in. Now, now if you buy on Amazon or something, that tax gets collected and charged right up front in most cases. So
Yeah.
that certainly helped us
Absolutely.
as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. So let's go down one more slide. So again, Rep. Young probably knows this as well, because we cut the budget and then instead of revenues falling, they actually grew immensely. The state has a whole bunch of money in the bank, just in the same way if I thought I was going to lose my job and I stopped spending money, but then instead of losing my job, I got a big raise. Now all of a sudden I have a whole bunch of money in my bank account. The state
Mhm.
has about 7 billion coming into the year we're in right now, $7 billion in surplus funds available. So we showed in that earlier slide, we have pretty healthy revenue growth forecast into the future, which is good for being able to meet state public priorities, and a whole bunch of money in the bank at the same time. In the coming months, Rep. Young, her colleagues, Governor Whitmer are all going to be negotiating on a budget. What do we do with all this money? Should we spend some of it and catch up on spending priorities? And how much of that maybe should we give back to the taxpayers in the form of tax relief? And how big should that tax relief be? Decisions that will have to be made here in the coming
Mhm.
months by the summer.
Yes, sir.
So let's jump down opposite direction there.
Mm-mm.
So think good, lots of good news in the state budget, but I want to talk about the history of the budget as well,
Mhm.
in terms of where we were coming from before COVID. We had a really difficult decade in Michigan between 2000 and 2010. And in a sense, as great as the news is, with lots of money in the bank, lots of revenue growth, we also were coming out of a really rough 10-year patch that people should keep in mind as they make these decisions in the coming months
Mhm.
about how we want to spend money or provide tax relief. So let's go down one more slide. Between 2000 and 2010, and folks who lived in Michigan and are old enough will remember this, we had a really rough decade. Very sluggish economy versus the rest of the country. Between 2000 and 2008, even before the Great Recession hit, we had lost 440,000 jobs in Michigan. Auto industry
Mhm.
struggling at that time. The Great Recession made that even worse. So Michigan kind of was all by itself in terms of the rest of the country and losing jobs for a while. The Great Recession came and Michigan lost another 375,000 jobs, along with the rest of the country. And that third bullet, we got to be a poorer state in terms of per capita personal income. We were about average in 2000. By 2008, we were 10% below average in terms of per capita personal income. So a real rough stretch. And then remember what else happened during, in a way to try to address some of the economic difficulties, we made some tax changes. We actually cut our income tax rate. We replaced our business tax, our Michigan business tax that was paid by a lot of Michigan businesses. We now have a corporate income tax, and that's paid by not too many Michigan businesses. Only big corporations kind of pay that. Lost a lot of business tax revenue during that decade. And then remember when we were trying to help fix our roads, we took $600 million in what would have been general fund revenue, and we moved it over to the roads on a permanent basis every year. So let's go to the next slide and we'll see
And
the
let me
results.
just let me ask a question
Sure.
there. I was just reading an article like the other day when we were looking at the business tax and the individual tax, and now we're looking at the individuals pay more than the businesses and taxes. Is that I
Well,
said
we
I
would
was
have
like,
always
explain that a
paid
little bit.
more,
Right,
because but a lot more now. So
yes.
businesses, we used to have a tax that was broad based on businesses. Lots, not all Michigan businesses paid it by any means, but a lot of medium-sized Michigan businesses, non-corporations even, would have paid a business tax. And now that that's a very narrow group of corporations that pay the tax. So we probably shed about $1 billion in business tax revenue as we made that shift from the Michigan business tax to the new corporate income tax. Businesses pay, now business owners pay income tax like we all do, and they pay that, but businesses themselves pay much less in taxes than across the board in Michigan than they used to. That's absolutely, excuse me, that's absolutely true. And this is the impact of it. So if we looked at this chart, so what is this? The top line here is actual general fund revenue, that discretionary revenue that's very important to all those functions of state government we looked at before. If I just showed you this from 2010 and on, it looks really good. What people forget about is the 2000 to 2010. We had our general fund go from $10 billion in actual dollars, $10.7 billion to $7 billion. We lost $3 billion in the general fund at that time. And that bottom line adjusts for inflation. You know, $10.7 billion in 2000 isn't the same as $10 billion today. So that bottom line adjusts for inflation and shows, you know, even with all this good news, all the growth that you see, that all those lines are going up from 2010 on, we're still 22% down in our general fund in terms of how much it really funds in the state budget. We can't buy as much with that money now as we could in 2000 by a significant amount. So that's the economic slowdown, and the tax policy changes we made have really sucked up a lot of that general fund revenue that the state uses for a lot of those functions we talked about. Let's look at a few examples then of what the impact of this has been on the state budget. Let's go to the next slide. So higher education, our universities, this looks at the blue line is the actual dollars for higher education going back to 2003 through this budget that the governor just released in February. Governor proposed a pretty significant increase for higher education, 10%. That's a healthy increase for the universities historically. But you'll see even after the governor's healthy increase, the universities would basically be back to where they were 20 years ago in 2003. And if you adjust for inflation, how much can we really buy for the $1.6 billion that we would get under the governor's proposal? It's 28% down. We have 28% less purchasing power for the universities. What's that mean? The universities used to 20, 30 years ago, most of their money came from state support and less of it from tuition. That's flipped now. They need a lot more from tuition because that state money has gone down. That makes college less affordable for folks who want to try to go to universities and so forth. So one area where we've definitely seen a big impact is universities. Let's go to the next slide on revenue sharing. We talk about our local governments who are struggling a little bit to make ends meet as well. Governor Whitmer's budget proposal, another 10% increase for revenue sharing in her February proposal. But again, that top blue line shows how much have we actually spent on revenue sharing to cities and villages and townships in counties around the state. We were spending $1.5 billion in 2001. We're spending about $1.5 billion in 2023. And again, $1.5 billion doesn't buy what it used to buy.
That's correct.
If we adjust for inflation, we're down 30% in terms of revenue sharing. So that's another area of the state budget that even though times are good right now, we're still we're not close to really even getting back to where things were a couple decades ago before we had that really tough decade. And then let's go down one more slide. State employment. When folks say, is state government's growing, it's growing way faster than it should. What state government is, whether state government's at the right size or it's too big or too small is all your own perspective. But without a doubt, state government is smaller than it was 20 years ago. This just looks at the trend. We had 61,000 plus full-time state employees in 2000. We're down to about 47,000 now. So that's, corrections officers and state police and child welfare workers and social workers working for DHHS. It's still a big state government, but we are much smaller than we were a couple years ago. all of those things come out of that horrible 10-year period that we had with revenues where we had to cut, kind of cut. And we're just trying to grow back now. So let's go to one more slide. And I'm going to close with, again, a question I get a lot. We pay a lot of tax. No one likes paying tax. I don't know too many people that like paying taxes.
Right.
People say, well, we're a real high tax state in Michigan, and that's been a problem. So is that true? Is Michigan a high tax state? And by high tax, I mean relative to the rest of the country. Again, is Michigan government too big, too small? Is it the right size?
Right.
Everybody has their own opinion on that. But is Michigan a tax a lot relative to the rest of the country? Where do we stand? Let's go to the next slide. And I'll just talk about something that happened in the 1970s that was to try to address that. Some folks were concerned at that time. We're too big. We need to limit our taxes on our people. And in 1978, the voters of Michigan passed a constitutional amendment called the Headley Amendment. And one of the provisions of that was it set a limit on state revenue. It said, let's look at what personal income in Michigan is in 1978. And taxes at that time were 9.49% of that personal income. So what's the percentage of taxes versus personal income right now, way back in the 70s? And let's set a limit. We can't have revenue grow any more than 9.5% of personal income in Michigan. And they put that in effect. And if you look for the first 20 years, it stayed kind of around. It dipped down and then came back. What happened again starting in 2000 when we had that really difficult period? Our revenue stopped growing at anywhere near personal income. So as of 2000, we were almost $12 billion below that limit. So in layman's terms, what's that mean? It means that our personal income is growing faster than our revenue. Our tax burden in Michigan, unequivocally, whether you think Michigan's the right size of government, too big, too small, tax burden on us has gone down significantly over the last 20, 25 years. And in fact, I found before the presentation, the Tax Foundation, which is a think tank, they show when we take state and local taxes, the property taxes we pay, Michigan is 46th in state and local tax burden. So, the numbers show Michigan is actually quite a low tax state right now. And to some people, that's a good thing. To some people, that's how do we fund our public services then if we have that kind of low tax.
When we look at that though, and we look at average incomes for residents, I mean, is that compared to what the people make in Michigan? Because that's the true story. It's just like when we looked at equalizing per pupil funding, but then you have these districts that are so far behind, it's like equals not equitable, right?
Yeah.
So you got to look at more than, so go ahead and explain that.
Right,
for us.
right. So that blue line, which is the limit, hopefully I was clear. That's the limit that was set. So, and then the orange bars are the actual revenue that we got. So if revenue had grown consistent with income, then those orange bars would be really close to that blue line. The fact that the orange bars are so far below the blue line means that instead of the average Michigander paying about 9.5% of his or her income to the state, now we're paying probably closer to 7% of our income to the state.
We're not making that much.
We're but that's based on how much we are making. So even if our incomes were going down, notice that blue bar starts to go down during that. The growth in that blue bar and that period starts going down too. That's because we're not making as much. But even based on what we are making, we're still our tax burden is still going down. Even during that time when you're right, Rep. Young, we weren't having healthy. We got poorer, as I said earlier, as a state.
Right.
Even considering that, we're still paying less. Now, a very good question is who's paying and who isn't paying. The business taxes we talked about so far. And in Michigan, federal government, we have a progressive income tax. So if I make a lot of money, I pay a higher tax rate. In Michigan, we have a constitutional restriction that says, nope, we can't do that. Everybody pays has a rate of 4.25% for our income tax. If I'm a billionaire or if I'm a low income working family, I pay that same rate. And some have said, boy, we should start thinking about maybe being more progressive with our
More progressive. We say that's for a different conversation, huh? No, keep going.
And then just last slide. I hope I haven't chewed up too much of your time.
No, you're right on time.
People are, I added this in at the last minute because I just think it's become an issue, and people are thinking about it in terms of, are we a high tax state or a low tax state? Talking about the gas tax or the motor fuel tax as well, and this will be my last slide. Two views of that, and if you just look at the state has a gasoline tax or a motor fuel tax, we pay 27.2 cents per gallon. And that goes to the roads and public transit. It's dedicated to transportation. That's 27.22 cents. We're about average. We're 25th out of 50 states. The US average is about 29 cents in terms of that motor fuel tax. If you look at total taxes on gas, that's where Michigan is a little unique, and we are relatively high there because we have the 6% sales tax. And that also is charged on our gasoline purchases. So when we add our motor fuel tax to 27.2 cents, and then we add that 6% sales tax on, our actual rate per gallon is about 45 cents. And that ranks us about 9th, and we're above the national average of 33 cents per gallon. So Michigan in total taxes on gasoline is a little high. There's discussion right now of maybe a moratorium on that sales tax piece on gasoline that I think both the governor and the legislature seem to be interested in, and we'll see if that happens.
Because the sales tax piece would not jeopardize the road funding. The work that we're trying to do to correct these roads. That's what we keep hearing about. I was just driving up 5 Mile in the district, and it's like, oh my goodness, there has to be another way. When are we gonna fix these darn roads? So
our sales tax some of it goes to schools, but we've got a pretty healthy school aid fund right now.
Right.
For other reasons. So
timing. Timing. This is the time to strike, I feel like. If we were going to do something like that, now would be the time. Okay.
So that's it. I hope that was helpful. I hope I kept that at a level. I am used to talking to policy wonks, and I'm definitely a policy wonk. So
yes.
I try to keep it at a high level, and appreciate the opportunity to be here. If there's time and you have questions,
we do. Don't go, because we're gonna. There are a few questions. I know we had a couple of questions from Facebook Live. We have that. I'd like to go to gallery view once we kind of do the presentation. So real quick, everybody take a screenshot of the contact information, and then we go to gallery view so we can see everybody. I know that we earlier had a couple of folks on here. We had, let's see here, do my own gallery view. Okay, oh goody, now I can see folks. So we had Senator Betty Jean Alexander. She was able to join us for a little while, so I hate that I wasn't able to acknowledge her, but she was here. Uh-oh, my dog heard the mailman. He learned how to open the door. I put him downstairs. Clearly, I didn't lock the door. So look, we had her here. We have good colleague, a former District 1 police commissioner. He's joined us today, Daryl Brown. And we always have my good colleagues here, Ms. Cora Duncan Foster, Ms. Gladys Noble. We call Ms. Peggy, but she shows up there. We have Dr. Pamela Nelson. We have Representative Kavanaugh's office is represented here with us here on Zoom. So we have Trustee Linda Jackson from Redford Township. We're glad to have her here on today. Folks from Brightmoor representing, I love it. And all others, just thank you for being here with us. We have a couple of questions. So Bob, let me see here. This is what I have. It says, good morning, just wondering, with all the surplus dollars, can money be allocated to the most vulnerable populations and pay COVID healthcare bills? That would be interesting. I mean, I would vote yes for all of that, but it's a process. And we can't just use this money any kind of way too, right? And so those are some of the things that we're looking at. We're figuring out as a legislature, the best way to address these. There have been funds that have been proposed to address some of the vulnerable populations. That those things are currently suggested by the governor, but she makes the suggestion and then the legislature gets to work, hammering out the details. Would you add anything to that, Bob?
No, I think you're right. I mean, we have federal dollars that are come in
Mhm.
that have some strings on them, so we can't use those for anything.
Right.
That state surplus, we could, that's our money, so we can
Right.
decide however we want to use that money. I would just say again, I think we have a lot of areas of the budget that probably are worthy of looking at, and certainly including, our public assistance to the vulnerable population, whether it's healthcare or just public assistance in general is another area that's really gotten whacked, I think, in that
Yeah.
first decade. So, yeah.
Okay, we have trustee Linda Jackson. She has her hand up. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Ms. Jackson.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Out of the $71 billion that you have for the current budget, is any of that temporary funds from the American Rescue Plan, or is that the actual budget funding for the year?
So that's the 22 budget. So I think for sure, a little bit of that federal money that's appropriated in 22 would probably be temporary American Rescue Plan dollars. We have a ton of money in that state fiscal recovery fund. Not much of it is that because we hadn't appropriated a ton of that yet. In fiscal year 22, the governor proposes to spend more in fiscal year in their 23 budget. But yes, there are probably billions of dollars in that federal area that are ARP related, which is one of the reasons that budget is so much bigger than it was just a few years ago. How much, I don't actually know. If you're interested, I could probably look that up.
I was just curious if that was like our standard budget amount, or if there was one-time dollars in there.
There would be one-time dollars in there that make that budget look bigger. I think maybe 3 years back before COVID, the budget was probably $55 to $60 billion. And some of that is natural growth. Medicaid is much bigger than it used to be, for instance, but some of that is also, as you said, one-time dollars that are in that budget.
Can any of that money be used for our roads?
Can any of the federal money or?
Yes, any of the surplus money that we have right now, can that be used for roads?
And any of the state money. So we said we have $7 billion in the bank from all that extra collections that the state took in. That can definitely be used for roads if that's the highest spending priority. Most of the federal ARP dollars cannot, therefore this or that, and couldn't be used for roads. I will say the Federal Infrastructure Act that was passed, and that's starting to get built into the budget right now. There's a lot more federal money that will be coming in for the roads as part of a regular annual federal allocation that we get. But the state money, yes. Yeah, that state money could definitely, the general fund could definitely be used for roads.
Definitely, we should have them drive down 5 Mile and we would get some money. I swear it's like driving on the moon.
I know. And that's I'm glad you mentioned those federal infrastructure dollars, because the folks are kind of waiting. It's almost like hedging your bets. Like, I don't want to spend this because I know this is coming.
Exactly.
When it's coming, right? So
exactly, because we're doing the same thing here in Medford.
Yes. All right.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Miss Cora Duncan Foster, where'd she go? I thought there she is, Miss Cora. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning.
There she is. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone. My question for Bob is that you mentioned about everyone pays 2% tax rate, the poor or wealthy. Is that what you said? A 2% tax rate. Everybody pays the same amount, poor or wealthy.
Yeah. So in Michigan, our income tax is 4 point, when we file our income tax returns, we pay 4.25
Mhm.
4.25% of our income. And there's a exemption, we get deductions and exemptions and so forth, but it's flat. We have a flat income tax and our constitution actually mandates that.
Mhm.
We would, if to change that, we'd actually have to have a vote of the people to change that. But, there's been discussion of, at the federal level, that's not the case. If I make a lot of money, I pay a higher marginal tax rate. And if I don't make much, maybe I pay, 15%. A lot of us might be in the 15% tax bracket. There aren't tax brackets in Michigan. We pay one rate. And if I'm Dick DeVos, I pay 4.25%. If I'm Bob Schneider, I pay 4.25%.
Right, right.
It doesn't seem fair. It's not fair. I mean, we should vote on that. I mean, somebody poor paying less than somebody who's wealthy.
Well, we
Right,
paid the,
we-
go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, so I mean, so for sure, if I don't make money, if I don't, excuse me.
I'm sorry, I can't give you a water. I'm sorry, Bob.
I have some here.
Okay.
You're all right
So
there,
if
Bob?
I make less money, than 4.25% means Dick DeVos is paying a lot more than me
Oh, I
in
see.
absolute
Okay.
terms, but in percentage terms, he's paying the same, and I don't want to pick on Dick.
Yes.
Oh, I see. All right, thank you.
It was a good one to pick on. That was a good example.
Yeah.
All right, sweetheart, thank you. Cortez, go ahead and unmute yourself. Look, you have a question?
Hey, good
You're
morning,
up
everybody.
next.
Good morning. Question just for you, Bob. I was just wondering, is there any funds that we can maybe get allocated to start being able to present financial literacy courses into the education system, basically into schools? So basically the adolescents kind of have a subconscious style and a way to be able to understand what money is and what currency is and how to be able to store their wealth over time and space and et cetera, how to transact with each other, just the basic level of a course. Is that
Sure.
possible?
Yeah, so I mean, and that might, that might already be happening in some districts now. I don't know if financial literacy is,
They
is
do.
already being incorporated into curriculums.
Right.
At their discretion of the.
It's not a mandate. So
Yeah, it's not
that's the key, Cortez. It's just not mandated by
Gotcha.
state law. But
Right.
there are districts who have already incorporated that. I have my sons when they were in high school. People who know me, they know, unfortunately, I ended up divorced, and me and my ex-husband, we have 50-50 physical joint custody. And so the boys, he had everything they needed at his house, and I have everything that, they would need at my house. And so when they would go stay with their dad, they hung out with their cousin who was in high school too. And the cousin was in 9th grade, I think, in Farmington Hills. And my son was in 11th or 12th grade, and they were doing homework. And part of the Farmington Hills homework was financial literacy and education.
Right.
And my son, he was furious. He was like, we're not getting this at my school. Well, it's back to wealthier school districts are able to do a little bit more. And that's something that we're actually working on in the legislature. So there was a bill up. I didn't support it because I really believe that they wanted to take a half a credit. Let me just explain this real quick. I support the idea, but not how we went about it. They wanted to take a half credit from foreign language. And if you understand foreign language, if you're able to get foreign language, you're able to understand anything and just become successful. I've just seen that work. So they wanted to take this half a credit and then apply that to financial literacy and mandate it that way. Some agree, some didn't. The Michigan Education Association, MDE, no, all of the education folks did not agree with that. Detroit Public School Community District did not agree with that. And so I tended to, side with the education experts, but we're back to the drawing board because we do believe that there is a way that financial literacy can be made of curriculum, but just curriculum in schools, that's a whole giant beast that we have to tackle. And just deciding to take a half a credit here, it's just a ripple effect. And you just can't, I won't say it was arbitrary because I respect the legislator who proposed it, but there's a lot more to it. So we're still working on that.
So what I saw last month, Florida, actually, they just got approved for financial literacy courses for high schoolers. So I don't know how they're going to be doing that, but maybe we can get the information and be able to implement that same type of stuff.
And also know this, we work with a bunch of third-party organizations that do just that. And when my son didn't get it in school, he was fortunate enough to be a part of the Midnight Golf program. And that's one of the main things that they do. That's part of their curriculum. And with that program, is
Right.
they teach financial literacy. So we're finding ways to do it, but I also believe it should be in the classroom.
Correct. I saw that. I kind of felt like your son. I'm like, wow, like I didn't get a chance to have that when I was in high school. Like I'm ready, just ready to be able to see that implemented
Yes,
for
sir.
the upcoming students.
Yes, sir. All right. Do we have any other questions for Bob? I don't know if he's got any place else to go. Bob, you're welcome to hang out with us. You know that. But well, you're right. You need to hear about this young man's experience and the cryptocurrency.
I actually may stick around if
You
if that's
are
fine.
more
I
than
listen to his
welcome.
presentation. I'll learn a couple things about cryptocurrency.
Sure thing. Well, again, thank you so much, Bob. We appreciate you. Stick around, huh?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Good to see everybody.
Yes. All right, Cortez, you're up. First off, let us know where you're just coming from.
Hey,
Start
okay.
it off that way.
First off, I want to just thank everybody. I want to thank you, Ms. Stephanie Young. I want to thank Ms. Alicia for putting all this together. Thank you so much, Kevin. Just grateful to be here. So my name is Cortez Diamond. I'm here representing the state of Michigan and also Diamond Capital Consulting Group. I actually just flew and I was grateful enough to go down to Miami. We spent 4 days down there for the Bitcoin conference. It was presented and hosted by Cash App. And it was just an incredible experience. Just overall, I'm just grateful to be a part of a culture that is moving forward into tech. I'm grateful to be able to travel and be able to transact with individuals on a peer-to-peer level. And so just getting to Miami, where do I start? So one of the biggest things that I learned overall is that owning one Bitcoin or more is going to not only become a big deal, but it's just more about the culture that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is based around. It's a family. It's a cult. It's a free spirit of love and giving. It's not about the money. It's not about the price. It's not about how many Bitcoins you have. It's about like a unit and a family and coming together to kind of go against the system. You know,
Uh-oh, he said it. He said it. Y'all heard it here.
It's cool, and it's cool being able to like see it online, but it's even like surreal being able to live it in like real life and real time. And so another thing that inspired me was seeing like celebrities transition.
But wait, before you get too far, Cortez, because this is the part I need you to understand. Me, as a state representative, you just said, this is exciting because it goes against the system. And by nature, I'm part of the system. So share with me though, what did you mean when you said that? Because we now know that Goldman Sachs, a well-established financial institution, is now into Bitcoin, which tells me you're becoming more of the system than you might have ever wanted to be. So explain to me what you meant when you said going against the system. I kind of have an idea, but I want those that are watching online and those of us joining us here in Zoom and those who will join later when they watch it because they couldn't right now. Give us a little bit more info on that.
Absolutely, State Rep. So what I mean by going against the system, so traditional finance is basically centralized. It has a central point of failure, it has a CEO. It can be shut down by the government or disrupted. And so what Bitcoin is in blockchain technology, it's the complete opposite. It's decentralized. It's run by the people. It has no central point of failure. It can't be shut down. It's kind of like the internet. And so it's run by the people for the people. And so when I say it's going against the system, it's giving the people more control of their own assets and utility of their own life and freedom. So basically, like if you're online, if you post something, or if it goes against Twitter's guidelines, or if you're doing something with the bank, if you don't keep enough money in there, they'll shut your account down. Or if you post something that it goes against Facebook, they'll remove your post. That's all centralized. And so with decentralization, it gives you more freedom, it gives you access to ownership, and it can't be taken off or shut down. And I think for us young people, that's what we want more out of life. We want the actual freedom side of life, and not like the cliche, we're free, but only to a certain extent, if that makes sense.
So no $250,000 FDIC security. You're on your own.
Correct. And really you don't need the FDIC and the insurance because it's decentralized. it's run across millions of nodes across the world. So it's in the people's trust. It's people's money. It's people's currency. So the people validate the transaction instead of one central point of failure or one legal entity that could be shut down or go down or be disrupted for moments at a time. I don't know if it ever happened to you, but if you ever logged in your app, but there's been times where I tried to log into my Bank of America app and to say, hey, we're having some technical difficulties, come back later. I'm like, hey, well, I'm in the grocery store now and I'm hungry. You know what I'm saying? So it's just one of those things that we're like, you have to wake up to where we're moving towards and slowly adapt and make it congruent to you and your philosophies.
Well, alrighty then. Well, tell us, I'm sorry, I interrupted you when you were about to tell us about some stars that you may have encountered who were participating in the Cash App cryptocurrency conference.
Oh God. Yeah.
While you do that, I'm gonna pull up your white paper so that we can kind of scroll through, but you go ahead and talk about that, please.
Yes. So what's interesting to me is seeing like high level celebrities transition and become conscious to financial literacy and being able to transition and become aware to where we're going financially and how to store your wealth over time and space. So basically, for me, if I'm an A-list celebrity, and I'm getting paid millions and millions of dollars, I really don't really care about really store my wealth because hey, I'm a millionaire, you know. But what I'm realizing is the celebrities and people of consciousness, they're realizing that because quantitative easing happened, which is just a fancy word of money printing, our money is becoming devalued, and it's becoming devalued since 1971, which is when Nixon took the dollar, which is basically when he took the gold off of gold off of the standard of the dollar, and so that's when money became debt. Point is, it's just interesting seeing things transition to a macro level and seeing human beings become conscious of how to preserve their wealth over time and space instead of just becoming totally invested in fiat currency, which is government issue currency. And so that's what I think is very interesting to me.
We hear your passion. So I pulled up your white paper here, community white paper that you kind of walked me through. I left there needing to take some Tylenol, but I was hanging in there and you told me I was getting it. By the time we were done, you said
Absolutely. You're doing a great job, State Rep. You're doing a great job.
So let's just kind of go through some of this. We don't have too long. I'll probably go to maybe 11:15. I understand that people have to hop off, and my apologies again, but I've always tell you, it's always good information. I think I'm going to make my meetings just 90-minute meetings so that you know that ahead of time. And then if you can stay, you can stay. If you don't, you don't. But trying to do it in an hour just never seems to quite work. So this is what we have. You have your key terms and terminology. You have an executive summary, buying, storing, and transacting with cryptocurrency, myths surrounding cryptocurrency and blockchain technology, exploring and learning blockchain technology, programmability, and what's Ethereum? What is that?
Ethereum.
Ethereum, okay.
That's the second largest cryptocurrency.
Okay.
Yeah, you can look at it as a programmable smart money.
Right. Scalability and throughput.
Correct.
And governance, compliance, regulatory considerations, conclusions. So we're not going to do all of this, but you're going to give us some high level. When we look at your terminologies, what are some of the things you really need for us to understand?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the first things I want you guys to understand is Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is the first cryptocurrency created. It is a decentralized currency that operates on the blockchain. And okay, so what is blockchain? Blockchain is just simply the technology that allows cryptocurrency to operate. Blockchain also is just an open ledger to let you know and give you transparency of every transaction that has ever come into existence. So blockchain could be used for agriculture. Blockchain could be used for decentralized finance. It could be used for real estate. It could be used for transferring deeds. It could be used for pretty much anything that traditional finance, anything traditional can be done on the blockchain. It's just going to basically give the public market more of a transparent understanding of where everything is going instead of putting it all into a central point or a central company or one legal entity, if that makes sense.
Okay. Is there any, go ahead, looking at your things here, is there something you want to call out for us?
Yeah, and I also want to bring one more, if you can scroll down just a little bit.
Yeah.
Down to decentralization.
Mhm.
But basically, once again, I just want everybody to understand the key thing to cryptocurrency is security, freedom, access, and just transparency. So we want everything to be as transparent as possible. We want it to go completely opposite of what the traditional system has been giving us. So there's documents can be altered with the central point, with a centralized company. There's can be all different type of slow down this. There's going to be a lot of variables that can go on when you have one single person controlling all of people's data or information or
entity.
finances. So when it's decentralized, it gives the access to everyone in a globalized way. Basically, it just allows everyone to be able to be transparent and communicate as we evolve through technology and move through time and space.
Woo. Okay.
Also, I would like you to go down to just executive summary. And I just really want to talk about like how we even got here. Going back to 1971 when Nixon took the dollar off of the gold standard. So that basically just meant that the dollar that you would go to the bank for, what you would used to do, you would go to the bank, you would, giving your certificate, whether it be $100, $100,000 or $1 million, and you would redeem that for physical gold. And that would be your store of wealth. That would be the way that you were preserving your wealth over time and space. And then you also will have silver coins, and that you will use silver coins for micropayments, using it for buy a house or using it for a car or food, etc. So when he took it off of the gold standard, money became really honestly worth nothing. It only had an intrinsic value because of what the people in the market believed that it had. And so in 2009, Bitcoin got created and started by, they say it was one person, but I believe it was a team of people, coders, hackers, just a whole team of people that came together.
Tech wizards. I know who they, a team of tech wizards for sure.
Correct. They came together to kind of go against, come up with a way to kind of go against the government from being able to debase the currency and causing us to go into hyperinflation over time. And so they created something called Bitcoin, which was a fixed amount. It's a decentralized currency that has a fixed amount, which is only 21 million. So that's why I say having one is going to become a big deal, because there's only 21 million. There's only going to ever be 21 million. There's 19 million in circulation as of today. Last week, the 19th million Bitcoin was actually mined, which means it came into circulation. So that means.
So how is it that we can't add? How come we can't add?
Great question. Great question. So you can't add to. It's actually a deflationary. So with the monetary with basically right now with money, the government can just print as much money as they want, and they can just devalue the currency. With Bitcoin, and it is inversely related to the dollar. So basically, you can't create more Bitcoin because it's already embedded into the code of the system that there will only ever be 21 million, and every 4 years it gets cut in half. So it gets stronger every 4 years, as if to the dollar, it gets weaker as they print more of it. So it has an inverse relationship.
Because it's supply, it's basically like supply and demand.
Correct.
So right. The demand will be huge.
It has an inverse relationship to the dollar, because as the dollar gets weaker, Bitcoin gets stronger because it's becoming more limited and scarce. Kind of just like gold. The reason why gold has its value is because there's only so much gold, limited to the earth. And so that's what makes it universal. And I call it God's money. My mentor calls it God's money. And the reason why it's called God's money is because it was here before humans, and it's going to be here way before, way after we're gone. And so it's recognized universally. And so that's what you can look at Bitcoin as, a digital replication of gold. It's a scarce, fixed amount. There will only ever be so much of it. And having a piece of it over time and space is a good way to store your wealth, because it's preserving your wealth over time and space versus reducing it, like basically meaning holding your wealth in cash. You're gonna be decreasing your wealth over time and space, because they're gonna be creating more and more dollars into circulation to keep the economy up. So people right now are looking for other alternatives and utilities to store their wealth over time and space, because they're realizing that if they keep all their wealth in cash, they're just going to go to zero. And so that's what we do for my company. We allow consumers access to information and different utilities to how to store their wealth over time and space outside of fiat currency.
Everybody take a breath.
Sorry I'm so sorry.
It's a woosah moment. But I'll tell you, the one thing you said that really brought it home for me is this Bitcoin digital replacement for gold.
Right.
But because it's digital, that sounds to me, you gotta help me understand this. I don't know who else is thinking this. I'm like, if it's digital, just like the dollar is physical, I mean, digital technology. I read someplace, I think you shared it with them, might even be in your white paper, about the young man who he had a whole coin, because the coin is worth how much now? 41,000
yes.
or something. One
Bitcoin
coin
right now is worth over $40,000 per coin.
Right. For over $40,000 per coin. He had done this because it was digital and it got locked up someplace. That's just $41,000. His one coin is just missing forever.
What about the guy who lost his private keys? He has over 200 million locked on there. He has only 2 tries remaining. So with Bitcoin, you get a public wallet, and then you get a public key, a private key. So it's kind of like you get an account number, like, as far as with traditional finance, and then you have your actual PIN number to access your funds that you don't share with anybody. So when you get your private key, you can send the funds to each other. But when you're accessing your actual funds, you have a private key. He actually lost that private key, and now he has 2 tries remaining. And if he can't figure it out within those 2 tries, he's going to lose over $200 million in Bitcoin.
So 200 million in Bitcoin, we're not producing any more. Wait, 200 million? We're only doing 21 million. Now you got me mixed up. What?
Yeah. So basically, he was an early adopter. He accumulated Bitcoin when it first came out. So when Bitcoin first came out, the incentivization for mining Bitcoin was 50 Bitcoin per every 7 minutes were being minted out into the public. So every 4 years, like I just referenced to, every 4 years, ever since 2009, Bitcoin gets cut in half. So the incentive for mining Bitcoin, which means just adding confirmations to the node and to the network, you get rewarded in Bitcoin for that, for basically contributing energy to the network and being a contributor to the consensus, to the network, to the community. So you get paid and rewarded in Bitcoin. So at first it was 50, then 4 years later it went to 25, then 4 years later it went to 12.25, then it went to 6.25, and then now then another 4 years it's going to go to 3.25. Today it's at 6.25, and then in 2024, in 2 more years, it's going to get the incentivized for adding that and the confirming blocks to the blockchain that you're going to get 3.
Oh my God, you know what?
I'm sorry, all of this is in the white paper, but today we're going to just try to keep it as basic as possible.
Yeah, you already lost that. You already lost that battle.
Yeah, so and also to answer your question, so in the beginning there was 21 million Bitcoins out to the public. So you could acquire you could try to acquire as much as possible.
Help me understand this, Cortez. 21 million Bitcoin out to the public, right? Let's just start there. That's what you just said.
Correct.
Dude who lost his key has 200 million.
I think it came out to, I think he had like 50,000. I think he had like 50,000 Bitcoins or something like that, I believe.
So, but you're saying, I'm trying to understand how 21 million now equal 200 million, because it grew, in value. It didn't start like he originally had of this 21 million that you're ever only going to produce. You're only ever going to produce 21 million Bitcoin.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
That's not $21 million. That's 21 million physical Bitcoin, and then their price go up and down.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
and now he has 200 million worth of Bitcoin of the 21. We don't know how many Bitcoin, well, I guess so we do know it's average around 40,000. I guess we can do
Correct.
the
And
math.
there's only 2 million Bitcoins remaining, that hasn't come into circulation yet. So, at the time, there was 19 million into circulation. So, there really had no early adoption utility for Bitcoin. So that's why he probably bought it when it was at like $1 or at like 15 cents or whatever the denomination was, and just held on to it at his wallet. And of course, over time, it became more valuable, and the market looked at it and seen it as an actual utility and a store of wealth, and not just something like for fraudsters or something you use for over the internet for fraud payments or buying whatever, or, explicit payments. It grew in value. And so anything that another person that we can agree to that is worth something to another person, that's considered money or considered valuable. And so that's kind of what happened with Bitcoin. The public just slowly but surely started to adopt it. It was like, wait, hold on. This is scarce. It has sound money principles. It has a fixed amount like gold. It's digitalized. It has a decentralized consensus to it. It goes against the system. It has no one person who can just shut it down or stop it. Like, okay, wait, let's look into this.
But
And
we
so
also,
that's
there's
how-
no one entity that can help somebody who lost their key. I'm like, I think that's horrible. What do you mean? There's nobody I can turn to help me. If I forget my password, I got to go through some hoops, but I can recover my password with the bank, or I can recover my password to log onto my computer. But there is no recovery. There's no safeguard. If you lose something like this key that you talked about, then you're just out of 200 million. And if that's the case, because it's still a digital and electronic,
and that
people
is
just
set
won't
up-
have
that is
access.
set up- That's
Mhm.
set up for your safety. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, well, I get for your safety, but okay, I forget stuff. I lost stuff. What? There's just nothing that can be done. You say this guy have 2 chances,
Yep.
and then
Two
it's just gone
chances.
forever.
That's right. And so all of
I
this.
know, Miss Cora, we like shaking our head like, no, no.
Yeah, it sounds scary. It sounds very.
Because it
scary
is. It
at
don't
first.
just sound scary. It is scary.
Absolutely, absolutely. It sounds
Yes, it
very
is.
nerve-wracking at first, but as you understand that it is based around for your security and for your purposes, it makes more sense later. So you get a recovery phrase that you get. It's a authentic encrypted password. And what you want to do is you want to write it down or put it somewhere, or never share it with someone, so you can access your funds and be able to move your store of wealth over time. So it's basically like being able to have gold, and then there's something happens to your gold and your house is burning down. You can't scatter. It's hard to store gold over time and space. So being able to have Bitcoin and seeing this as a digital asset and utility, it makes it easier for the consumer to be able to say like, hey, I can go to Brazil, I can go to Italy, I can go wherever I want and travel and still have my funds travel with me across time and space, and not worry about having to saw my gold in half or leave some of my gold, my wealth behind, because it's, like I said, it's hard to use gold over space, but transfer it over space, but it's good over time.
Okay. Do we have any questions?
I'm sorry if I'm overwhelming you with the information or talking.
No, it just is what, look at Miss Peggy. I know. Miss Alicia, what were you gonna say? I thought I saw your hand. I thought I saw your hand come up. I'm just
Well,
looking at that emoji Miss Peggy put up there. We're trying to get it. I promise you, because I want to understand, I want to get it, but it scares me. I'm just gonna tell the truth. Miss,
There is-
okay, then Miss
Yeah,
Alicia.
there is
then,
a question. Yeah,
Go
there is a
ahead.
question from constituent Luella.
Mhm.
Thanks for this crypto overview. Can you please speak to the enormous energy required to mine Bitcoins?
Mhm.
Feels to me like destroying the planet is too high of a cost.
Mm.
Wow, great question. Actually, we just
Okay.
reading an article last week about the energy consumption for mining Bitcoin.
Mm.
Actually, we actually just found out mining Bitcoin actually isn't as bad and severe as we thought. The global gases and green gases that we get from pumping, basically pumping the fuels that we get from the carbon that's in the air is actually worse than the energy consumption that we would get from mining Bitcoin. And I can share that article in this
Chat.
in the
Yeah,
chat
drop
as
it in the
well,
chat
so then
for
we
us.
can reference that. But it's a thing where everyone kind of makes it like it's bad at first, which it is, but we're finding out ways that you can use renewable energy to mine Bitcoin instead of using the traditional way of the electrical fiber optic and basically the traditional way. Where we're finding other ways that we can use renewable energy and green gases and a more efficient electrical way to be able to make Bitcoin mining more efficient, if that makes sense. And also there's a guy who's using poop fertilizer and using the energy from that and the particles from that to mine Bitcoin. So there's people out there finding alternative ways to mine Bitcoin outside of, like you said, the traditional way. So I just think time is going to be the true teller of overall.
Mhm. I know looks like my good colleague, Representative Cynthia A. Johnson is on here. She's asking the questions that we already talked about. So Representative Johnson, if you're listening, I am going to have Mr. Diamond do a presentation for us I want to bring him to the Detroit caucus to do a presentation for Detroit caucus. And we'll be able to get all those questions answered. And I'll share the white paper that he shared with us too, but I'm already out of time, so I can't go back and answer the questions that we already answered. Miss Core, we're gonna let you, is there anybody else who have questions? We're gonna let you have the last question, and then we're gonna go into a quick overview. Yes, ma'am, because it's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot for me to understand. I'm trying to understand this. I have this Bitcoin. I mean, you talk about paying through air, space. There's no hard money. There's no money out there. No hard money, right? Cortez is just space.
Correct.
And so you use your cell phone to buy stuff. Is that how it's done? Or
correct. Yeah, so basically it's kind of just like our money now. It's digitalized. Our money is digital. It's not, when they print money, all they do is just add a bunch of zeros and ones to a computer screen, and then it gets sent over to the banks and et cetera. Then it goes from there. So with our money now, if you log into your app, it's just it's digitalized. It's just numbers on a screen, and then it gets moved around from there. And then when you want to go to the bank, you can take it out, you go to the ATM and you take it out, but they're trying to make it more, they're trying to take more cash out of circulation because it's becoming obsolete. So with Bitcoin, yes, it is interchangeable to cash. So just like if you wanted to go to the ATM, I'm working actually right now with working on getting a partnership with Las Vegas and getting the Bitcoin ATMs into the high roller room. So where basically the high rollers can be able to, they can go to their app, scan their app under their QR code, go to their private wallet, take out, 50 grand, get back to the table and keep it moving. Because I was one of the guys.
Cortez, there are hackers out there, but of everything, hackers. So can it be hacked? I'm sure it probably can. And plus, there's no help. There's nobody like us. State Rep said there's nobody to go to help you.
Absolutely. So great question.
What do you do?
Great question. So great question. Yeah, it cannot be hacked because the ledger, because of the blockchain, everything is on the blockchain. Everything is run by millions and millions and millions of servers all over the world. So in every transaction, any type of breach, any type of disagreement, it's going to be shared across millions of computers across the world. So it's not just, like I said, it's not centralized. It's not one single entity where it could be breached or hacked. It will have to be a 51% overload over the network, which is, it would take quantum computing and something to a whole nother magnitude to be able to even slightly attempt to try to break the code and break the algorithm consensus. And even if it did, by it being decentralized, the community can come together and come up with a new consensus to alternate the upcoming problem or whatever it is that is coming into fruition, if that makes sense.
It's all very, very over my head.
It's way over mine. Way over mine.
Einstein.
I see one more really good question. It says, who gets the coins when, if I lose and use my keys? So that's a really good question. So it's on the blockchain. It's not lost. what happens is that transaction and those keys will be forever on the blockchain.
Locked?
It will just
They're
be
just
on the
locked. I
Yep.
mean, they just, right, they're just locked. That's the way in my brain, that's how I process it. It's, you
Mhm.
can't utilize them, they're just there.
Yep.
I
So
feel
no one
like y'all
can
gonna
take
figure out a
them.
way to unlock
Yeah,
them.
No one can take them, no one can access them. And by it being on the blockchain, you will be able to see that transaction sit there forever. So it'll basically show your public wallet, the time it got sent there, the timestamp, how long it's been there, and so forth. It's just the blockchain basically just shares a public data with everyone across the world, for every transaction that's going on.
That just would hurt my feelings if I had to look at my money, my $200 million is sitting there. And it's on the blockchain, but I can't get to it because I don't remember the key. Okay. All right. Yes, sir. Final words.
Yes,
Cortez.
yes. Overall, this concept of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, this is used to store your wealth over time and space. Look at it as you buy gold to store your wealth. You buy fine art to store your wealth over time and space, because you don't want to keep your money tied into paper assets as they get diminished by the government and through quantitative easing and debasing of the currency. You don't want to end up like Venezuela, Germany, Argentina, and Zimbabwe, where you have to go to the grocery store and they're burning money. A loaf of bread costs $50,000. A bottle of water is $100,000. You don't want to go into hyperinflation, and you don't want to lead into social unrest into the public. So what you want to do is you want to find utilities and assets to where you can store your wealth over time and space. And so Bitcoin is that digital utility. Another metaphor or analogy is if you have a bunch of fine art, where are you storing it? If you have a lot of gold, where are you storing these assets? Things happen. There's natural disasters. There's bad people out here in this world that want to take. And so with Bitcoin, it gives you all of these the scarcity principles and qualities to it, but it allows you to have access and liquidity and privacy at the same time of being able to store your wealth over time and space. So what I would how I would look at it is it's digital gold, and that you can have access to anywhere in the world instead of worrying about your gold being somewhere confiscated when you leave to go to the store, or if you leave to go out of town, or you're worried that you left $500,000 in gold somewhere where you really isn't safe. You don't have to worry about that. Your wealth is on the blockchain. It's online. It's stored securely. And so what you can do is you can move your Bitcoin from being on a public exchange, which is centralized, kind of like something like a Coinbase, and you can take it and put it onto a cold storage, which is offline. It's still on the blockchain. It's called a cold wallet. We got to go, but I just really want you to know this really fast. You're going to take it, you want to put it offline. And what that is, it's going to store your wealth over time and space securely. You can come back to it, bring it online, and use it for micropayments and things like that. But I will also never use Bitcoin for day-to-day transaction. I would buy it and forget about it. Buy it for your kids and forget about it. And just put it away and just watch it.
I know, and we're so out of time, but that's the one piece that we didn't talk about, because we know that one coin is now $40,000 or more. So we know my circle of friends aren't just buying coins, but you can get a group of people. So tell me this, Cortez, what's the value of a group of 10 people coming together, putting $100 in, coming up with $1,000? Thank you. Coming up with $1,000 and buying $1,000 worth. What's the value of that, if there is any?
Great question, State Rep. I think that the value is that's very good. And I think that it would be ideal to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible, and just look at it again as a way to store your wealth over time and space as the dollar gets depreciated every day. They're printing $125 billion a day just to keep the economy up. There's so much going on right now. We're in a bubble, and it's just time to wake up to what's really going on.
To wake up to what's really going on. That's a good way. Hey, man, brother, I appreciate you. I love your passion. Let me tell you guys something. I remember watching this young man before Bitcoin, and it was kind of like, okay, we were like, okay, all our young people got to figure out what they're going to do with their life. What's my life purpose? and seeing you walk in it like this, not just walk in it, but have mastered it. It's just amazing. 10 years ago, I don't think I would have been thinking, I think I'm gonna have Cortez be a guest speaker as I sit as a state representative. I know, yeah, you couldn't have thought it, but that's how fast the world is moving. So I so appreciate your passion and how you've done your work. You don't speak as somebody who kind of know. I heard the stories about you at that conference, and people are like, oh my God, who are you? You have to come and talk to my people and all of that. So thank you for
Thank you so
carving
much.
out time. I don't know why we moved again.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for having me on today, State Rep. Thank you again. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So grateful. Thank you.
Amen. God bless you, brother. We'll stay in touch.
Thank you.
Okay, huh? So to wrap things up today, because it's always a mouthful, but it's always it's just exciting to hear about. And if look here, when you sit up and do the math, me and my son, we talk about this, and we add up how many times we went to what's our favorite place? Famous Dave's. I love their catfish dinners. How many times we went to Famous Dave's? How many times I might have got a Chipotle dinner? All of that stuff can add up to, like, within a couple of few months, purchase of Bitcoin, because that's things that I will never see again. It served an immediate gratification, but I can eat at home. That's just the truth. But if we just take those dollars and let's just go ahead and decide to put a few aside and see what happens. Those young people who had no idea what this was, but they believed in this type of technology, they believed that it could do something special, who bought these coins for $2 and $3, now have $200 million. I pray that young man figure out his key code, whatever that thing is. I pray that they can get access to that, because people are starting to use this currency, and we're going to see where it ends up. But one of my jobs is to make certain that my folks know what's happening out here in the world. So we want to do that. I just wanted to bring up again, as we get closer and closer to the election cycle, there are still some ballot petitions that are circulating. Protect MI, my vote. I believe that is the one that folks from the other side, I make no crime, I'm the Democratic state representative. So if I'm talking about the other side of the aisle, I'm just talking about Republicans. And there's an attempt to to do a bunch of stuff. They found a way around voting. You can bring stuff to the legislature, but because we have Governor Gretchen Whitmer, then we can shut some stuff down, right? And so now they can take it to a ballot initiative. And really the one I'm thinking about is the one on education. That's the one that's really upsetting me, that whole voucher piece. Should have put that on the slide. So be careful about any proposals, any ballot initiatives. People are asking to get your signatures and telling you that this will be your opportunity to send your kids to private school, when it's really an opportunity to take the hard-earned dollars that we've fought for to get into our public schools out of our public schools, so that people can use them to send their kids to Country Day. Now, let's be clear. If my kids could go to Country Day, amen, but the money they're talking about, that's not enough to pay the full tuition. So you take the monies out of the public school and then leave them suffering, and then you get put out of the private school because you really couldn't afford it. And now you're back to the public school that has already lost funding. So it's a trick. So I just want people to be really, really cognizant of that. Watch these petitions that folks are circulating out there. This voter protection, we introduced, Dems introduced 2 packages. I was a part of the second package, but co-sponsor on all the bills. And I got a call from CNN, Kevin from the office was like, CNN reporter want to talk to you about your bill in the election protection package. And what my bill does is it bans open carry weapons at the voting booth. And when I think about that, I think about what happened January 6th up at the Capitol. I think about what happened prior to that. I think that was the April or the spring of the previous year when they took over the Michigan Capitol. I wasn't in the legislature at the time, but we all saw it. Armed gunmen were standing up in the gallery overlooking legislators. And if anybody would have had an itchy finger, it could have been a massacre. And so we fought really hard to ban open carry weapons, to stop that type of intimidation at the Capitol. And I just believe we need to do the same thing when we go vote. I was one of those parents that took my sons with me to vote. I believed it was important for them at an early age to understand their rights, and not just their rights, but the importance of sharing their voice and their opinion on how they thought things should be and who they believed in could get the job done for them. And so I brought them with me, but I can't imagine bringing them and walking past armed gunmen with automatic weapons as we're just simply trying to do our constitutional right and cast our vote. So I talked to that reporter about that just earlier this past week. Hopefully the article will come out and I'll be able to share with you, but it's important. And it's one of those hot topics, because let's be clear about this. I'm not necessarily against people owning guns someplace. You can do all of that, but you can't use it to attack me and to intimidate me. That you cannot do. And that's what that legislation is all about. Kevin, go to the next slide. I just want to highlight a couple of things. There's a next slide. So we've talked about the budget, and here you'll just see the governor's plan. I just wanted to highlight, I got this slide from one of my colleagues. We did an infrastructure roundtable in Livonia last week, but this is a good slide. It talks about these different investments that the governor is proposing. $66 million for reliable generator backup state-owned pumping stations. We all know why that's important, as our cars were floating down the expressway during that last rain event. We needed to invest in that. We're looking at $578 million for roads and bridges and airports and local and inner city transit and rail programs. Well, Miss Jackson, who talked about that 5-mile road, will tear your car up just trying to get from Telegraph to Beach Daily. So we know we need that. We know we need the additional 111 million for roads, 150 million for more roads, economically critical roads. Then we have more money, 66 million for generators and pump safety. Is kind of you have this slice here that's blue, this slice up here green, 60 million for rail grade separation. So that's huge. So I just took a tour with the railroad here in Detroit. It's over off of Livernois in Southwest Detroit. And it was interesting. We talk about these grade separations. What that simply is we don't want to have to wait when those bars come down and now you're stuck and you don't know how long you're going to be stuck there waiting on that train to cross. What this money will do is help build either an overpass where traffic can go over and the trains can go without anybody having to wait, including emergency vehicles like our EMS and like police, so fire and police, they'll be able to still get where they need to go, or under, where they'll build it to go under the railroad. And so that's what this investment would do. And then what are some other big ones? 500 million to remove lead lines and failing septic systems and water contamination. This is huge. We need every single dollar. I can't wait. I know the city has some plans, how they're going to be addressing these. The city of Detroit has some plans. I'm sorry, other municipalities do, as well as 250 million to improve access to broadband. If the one thing we know that COVID did was show the disparities in the access, where inner city kids just not, and rural, many of our rural students also did not have access to just pivot to online learning. We've got to do better. And so we have a $250 million proposed investment to do just that. Next slide, Kevin. I just wanted to talk about quickly, because we're talking about lead. So we also have, there was a bipartisan lead package. I have a bill in that will require a lead paint assessment in a house before you purchase it. We need people to know what you're getting into. It's called Eyes Wide Open, particularly families that are moving in with smaller children. And if there are hazards, if there are lead hazards in that house, you need to know about it. And so, of course, I'm getting pushback from some of my friends over at the realtors. They're concerned they won't be able to sell their houses. I'm like, that's not it. But the who's ever selling needs to be able to disclose what's going on with that house so that people will know. So if a young family doesn't want to buy that house and invest in the lead remediation, and somebody else who wants to use it as a retirement home and don't have no grandkids and still want to buy it, I just need to know what I'm getting into. And so that's something that was the bill that I introduced. Next slide, Kevin. And then lastly, for any small business owners, so here in partnership with Pastor Robin Moore, She's the pastor of First Baptist Institutional Church. She's going to have another meeting. She's really has her heart set on creating a small business association, a community and business association with those businesses along 7 Mile. And we're going to have a meeting. It'll be a hybrid. You can join virtually or we'll be in person. That's May 23rd. That's a Monday from 7 to 8:30. We ask you to come out. We know Money Talks. We'll have financial resources, information on grants. You'll be able to register with Detroit Means Business. And then we'll also talk about for our small businesses, things like the Green Light program, why that's important, why it's reducing crime with those businesses that currently are partners with Green Light. And then our radio patrols. Radio patrols are amazing. I'm a radio patroller. I still go out on patrol at least once a month, drive the community because then that visibility actually makes a difference. So we have that happening. So you get that information there. It'll be on our Facebook page as well. I believe it is already. You can always check our Facebook for additional information. Next slide, Kevin, because I'm moving that turbo. It's like, what's on your mind? Hopefully you've been asking your questions as we've gone along. Next slide, Kevin. This is the contact information. We always want to put this up on the screen so that you can know how to contact us. And if there are any burning questions, now is the time because I've kept you all over. But yeah, this is what we do in House District 8. So for people who are coming from different areas, perhaps some folks from Livonia, perhaps some folks from Redford, this is how we do it in District 8. Just want to be certain that people are aware what's happening at the state level as well as in the community. And with that, I don't see any hands raised. Anybody have
There's one question on Zoom.
Okay, what is it? I'm not there.
It is from the Brightmoor Artisans Collective.
Yes.
And they want to know, can you please expand on the initiatives to address water contamination?
Water contamination. Let's go back. So, well, there are a couple of different proposals. When you say initiative, is there a certain, because right now we are allocating dollars. Who are they? Are they there on Facebook? Oh, I'm like, are they in Zoom? Or on
Zoom. Zoom.
Okay, all
Would
right.
you like to expand? Please.
Yeah, is there something else on the Zoom? How about this? I owe them a meeting. So I will set up a meeting with the Brightmoor Artisans so that we can spend more time because I don't want to glance over this. I want to be certain to give you all your time and be certain to address any concerns that you have. So I don't want to shortcut this conversation.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, there's yeah. Okay. I'm like, are they on Zoom? Yes. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Is that good? Because we haven't met in a long time. So let's just go ahead and set up our own meeting so we can discuss that.
Awesome.
Who am I talking to though? It says Brightmoor Artisan, but who is the person?
I am Courtney Todd. I'm the newest executive director over at Brightmoor Artisans Collective.
Well, welcome, Courtney. Yes, I need to meet you anyway. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Can you drop your email in the chat real quick, Courtney, and we can get that in? Perfect. Get that in circulation.
Yeah, because I it's a bunch of stuff I want to do. I've already committed to putting together a tour of the farms in Brightmoor. There are people in Lansing that are itching to get over there and take a tour of the farm. So there are a bunch of things that we need to talk about. Okay. Well, with that ends another community conversation. Thank you all for your patience. I know that if there's ever a subject that I haven't proposed that you're interested in, please let me know and we'll be certain to get that together for you all. That's just what we do. And I appreciate you. Take care, everybody. Enjoy your Monday.